All right, good morning. Chase Currie here again. We're going to talk a little bit about grasses, forbs, and succulents in this particular video. Mr. Rutledge hit on woody plants. Just want to spend a little bit of time talking about each class and the importance they have. In an earlier video, Mr. Rutledge discussed the importance of forbs on the landscape, and if available, and keep in mind those are only available at certain times of the year depending on rainfall, forbs are the most preferred vegetation class for white-tailed deer. Now keep in mind they're not always available. This particular forb here is American basket flower. Forbs not only provide a food source in the sense of plant material, but a lot of these forb species we have in South Texas also produce a seed that is palatable to bobwhite quail, blue quail, other wildlife species. So keep in mind these forbs not only provide a food source for white-tailed deer, but they also provide a food source for bobwhite quail and other bird species. This would be an example. This is one-seeded croton. This is a really good seed producer for a lot of your bird species, mourning dove, white-winged dove, both quail species. This particular plant here is false ragweed. Now this would be a perennial. Let me find that one-seeded croton again. Anyway, the one-seeded croton is an annual. So you've got annual forbs and you also have perennial forbs. Perennial forbs tend to resprout each year from a woody base that is underneath the soil, whereas annuals typically resprout from a seed. And then we've also got paper flower here, as well as Blackfoot daisy. The importance here with the forbs is keep in mind the diversity they provide across the landscape and the food source. Not only food, but they also provide cover to an extent. And we'll move on to our grasses here. Grasses don't particularly provide a lot of food in regards to white-tailed deer, but they do provide cover, specifically fawning cover. This particular grass here is southwestern bristlegrass or bristlegrass. This actually provides a great food source in regards to the seed that it produces for a lot of different bird species. You've got slender grama here, which is a nice little short grass. One thing to keep in mind with these grasses, depending on the grass species, they provide a different structure across the landscape. You have short grasses, and then you also have taller grasses. So they provide cover for white-tailed deer, but they also provide good nesting cover for quail. And I want to spend just a brief second here talking about some of the exotic grasses in this particular region that we as managers allocate a lot of our time to try and manage across the landscape. These exotic grasses are very invasive in nature, and they tend to outcompete or overcrowd a lot of our native species depending on the habitat type. So this particular grass is buffle grass. You can manage these species with different tools. I believe Marine Frank discussed the 5 different tools of habitat management. One being cows. You can manage buffle grass with cattle. And lastly, I want to talk about, in my opinion, arguably one of the most important plants we have in South Texas across the landscape, but also a plant that we as managers at a certain density can be concerned about. So that's one thing I want to drive home here with these particular plant species. Each plant has its value. Now, at what specific density across the landscape, that may change. You wouldn't want, I'll give you an example, seacoast bluestem, a climax grass species in our deep sandy soil here in South Texas is a great grass. We manage for that grass, but we also wouldn't want a solid monotypic stand of seacoast bluestem. It's all about diversity across the landscape. This is prickly pear, which would be considered a succulent, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Texas Parks and Wildlife has found this in the rumens of deer 12 months out of the year. So this is a very valuable plant depending on the time of the year. It also produces mast, which Mr. Rutledge spoke about earlier, which is just what a lot of people refer to as prickly pear tunas. This provides a very valuable food source. So you've got essentially 5 different classes. Mr. Rutledge talked about the woody plants and the mast. And then I just discussed the forbs, the grasses, and the succulents.